Friends, get ready. Today, I'm going to tell you about the creepiest discoveries in human history. It's going to be scary, interesting, and at the end, something for those with nerves of steel. You might say these are just stories, but when you delve into these horrors of the past, even skeptics start to doubt. There's always something dark and mysterious surrounding such finds, and we can't ignore them. From time to time, archaeologists stumble upon something so unsettling that it sends chills down their spines. It makes you wonder, what if those ancient fears weren't so far from the truth? Let's start with a chilling story from Italy, in a small village called San Calogero, located in the southern part of the country. In 2015, archaeologists stumbled upon something that made them reconsider the fears that plagued medieval Europe. In one of the graves, they'd found the remains of a young girl, aged just 15 to 17. Her skeleton was buried under heavy stone slabs, immediately suggesting ancient rituals. This wasn't just any burial. The stones were specifically laid to ensure the witch couldn't rise again. Can you imagine? People were so afraid of those accused of witchcraft that they believed even after death, witches could return and exact revenge on their tormentors. This girl lived sometime between the 9th and 15th centuries, during a period when fear of witchcraft was at its height. Medieval Europe was practically boiling over with hysteria about witches. Anyone could be accused: an old neighbor woman, a strange-looking person, or a young girl like this unfortunate soul. The reasons could be as mundane as illness, odd behavior, or unusual appearance. Scientists later determined that the girl suffered from iron deficiency anemia, which could have made her pale and weak, prone to fainting spells. For medieval minds, this was enough to suspect witchcraft. She was accused, likely tortured, burned at the stake, and her body was thrown into a pit to lock her soul away forever. This wasn't an isolated incident. Nearby, they found the remains of another young girl, aged 13, buried face down. In medieval magic, it was believed that burying a witch in this manner would prevent her from rising from the grave to haunt the living. Just think about it. The fear of witches and magic was so strong that people devised entire rituals to lock the souls of those they feared, even after death. Stone slabs on the grave, the body positioned in a certain way. All of this was part of ancient magical protection. Imagine them, under the moonlight, trembling with fear as they carried out the execution, laying stones on the grave, afraid that at midnight the witch might return for them. Next, we move to the Utstal Alps. In 1991, German tourists, hiking along mountain trails, stumbled upon something they initially mistook for the body of a fallen climber. But the more they looked, the more they realized this wasn't a modern person. The frozen mummy, preserved for thousands of years in the mountains, looked like something carried here by the spirits of the peaks. Ötzi, as he was later named, turned out to be one of the oldest human remains ever found in Europe, over 5,300 years old. And what's truly eerie is that his body looked as if it had come from another world. When archaeologists began studying him, they discovered that Ötzi had died from an arrow that pierced his shoulder. The arrowhead had lodged so deeply that Ötzi couldn't remove it, likely bleeding to death on the icy slopes. But that's not the scariest part. A series of mysterious deaths started happening after his body was recovered from the ice. Historians and scientists who studied the mummy began dying one after another under mysterious circumstances. One was buried by an avalanche, another died in a car crash, and another succumbed to a fast-acting illness. Coincidence? Many scientists were skeptical of the idea, but the curse of Ötzi still lingers over his frozen remains. Over the years, hundreds of people have worked with Ötzi, but only a few met their untimely ends. Mystical? Perhaps. But who would want to come face to face with a spirit that had spent thousands of years trapped in the icy mountains? Now let's move to the cold lands of Greenland. In 1972, archaeologists were exploring the Nuussuaq Peninsula when they came across a burial site that was strikingly different from anything they had ever seen. Inside, under thick layers of ice, they found the bodies of 8 Eskimos, buried over 500 years ago. The grave was located beneath a rock, and due to the low temperatures, the bodies were almost perfectly preserved. But the most horrifying discovery was the body of an infant, just 6 months old, who may have been buried alive according to ancient Eskimo traditions. This baby likely suffered from Down syndrome. In ancient Eskimo culture, certain rituals seem cruel and terrifying to us today. Children born with disabilities were sometimes sacrificed to the spirits or abandoned to die, to spare them from future suffering. After all, in such harsh conditions, every mouth to feed was a burden. Alongside the infant, archaeologists found the bodies of 6 adults. Their faces bore strange tattoos, giving them an even more mystical and eerie appearance. Deep lines and symbols etched into their skin seemed to tell a story of rituals long forgotten. As the archaeologists gazed at these mummies, it felt as though they were staring into the eyes of the past, where each symbol could mean life or death. This look back into the cold, unforgiving lands of Greenland still sends shivers down the spines of those who study it. Now we journey to Egypt, where archaeologists in 1886 made a truly mysterious discovery. French Egyptologist Gaston Maspero uncovered a mummy that would become known as the Screaming Mummy due to its terrifying facial expression. The man, found in the Valley of the Kings, was buried next to royal figures, but his sarcophagus stood out. It was a simple wooden box, without the usual ornate decoration of noble Egyptians. The mummy was wrapped in sheep's wool, a sign of impurity in ancient Egyptian culture, and the man's face was twisted in a ghastly grimace, as if he had died in excruciating agony. Who was this man? Why was he buried alongside kings but with such disgrace? Scientists believe this mummy may have belonged to the eldest son of Pharaoh Ramesses. Historical records suggest that the pharaoh's son was involved in a plot to overthrow his father. The conspiracy was uncovered, and the son was possibly executed, but not without suffering. Some speculate that he was forced to take poison, resulting in a slow, painful death that left his face frozen in torment. Imagine a body so twisted by agony that even after thousands of years, it still screams from the afterlife. Finally, perhaps the most horrifying discovery of all was made by archaeologists in 1988 in Ashkelon, Israel. Beneath an ancient Roman sewer, where waste from public baths flowed, archaeologists stumbled upon the bones of infants. Thousands of bones belonging to children. It is estimated that around 100 infant remains were found there. The grim discovery pointed to a shocking practice of the time. In ancient Rome, newborns were not considered fully human until the father acknowledged them. If the father rejected the child, it could be killed without question. Scientists believe that the bones found in Ashkelon may have belonged to the children of prostitutes. If the baby was a boy, it was killed immediately, while girls were sometimes kept to eventually join the ranks of priestesses of love. Imagine a society where the killing of newborns was not only accepted, but expected in certain situations. This is one of the most disturbing stories of ancient cruelty, one that still haunts modern people today. So, there you have it, friends. When you hear about these discoveries, it becomes clear that the past was far from peaceful or safe. These stories are more than just bedtime tales. They make you think about how dark and mysterious ancient customs and rituals could be.